one thing I'm owing you.
So, good morning, gentlemen and ladies. I hope my screens are being seen.
Yes, sir.
Good. Today we are talking about psychoanalysis. It's not actually psychoanalysis today, but it's the basis for it. Things that happen to make the initiation of psychoanalysis possible. I call it the things that aligned to make Sigmund Freud develop psychoanalysis. And basically, we're going to look at the state of medicine in the 19th century. We'll see the important things people contributed at that point. We'll also look at the state, or like I call it, the sorry state of psychiatry, 19th century. Then we'll see the gap between what happened in general medicine and psychiatry. And then Sigmund Freud, how he came in and attempted to bridge the gap. And so we'll look at psychoanalysis, just the theories of it and the basis for it, so that at our next lecture, we'll be able to talk about psychoanalysis itself properly. I'm fully aware that many of us are psychiatrists and have done lots of reading on psychoanalytic theory. We write the exams and do all sort of things on it. But there are people here who don't have a background. That's the reason this first section of the lecture is being done. Now, the triumph of the germ theory and the identification of the pathogen. The germ theory is a very interesting thing because one of the people, I think it's Hook, when he presented his findings in a conference, he had the culture and told the people within during the presentation that the content of this petri dish are the germs, they are the bacteria, and they cause illness. Everybody laughed because people had believed that illnesses just occurred. But for someone to say that they are caused by living things and that he isolated them and that they're in a petri dish, it was a fun. And to make it worse, one of the opponents walked to him, collected the whole thing and drank. And he didn't die, at least not during the conference. So it really made mockery of the germs theory and it set it back a lot. But in the 19th century, things started getting better for the germ theory because Robert Koch had in 1882. By the way, you remember that the 19th century would end at 1999.
Sorry, sir, your slide is not moving, sir.
At the 1800 and end last day.
Sorry, sir, your slide is not moving, sir.
1982, Robert Koch identified the tubercle bacilli, and it was exclusively shown it was responsible for tuberculosis. He also, with another guy in the next year, identified the cholera bacteria. I hope it's a bacterium. 1983, Edward Klebs also found the bacteria that would cause diphtheria. Soon, in the 80s, other illnesses, typhoid fever, pneumonia, meningitis, tetanus, all the causative agents were found. And what this did to medicine, it made medicine a little more exact. People would know that if there's an illness by any name, that something specific would be the cause of the illness. So that's the core thing. Every illness had its own cause, and sometimes it was people were able to identify it. Now, that wasn't the only thing. You remember we were talking about bacterium mainly, but malaria also, the cause of it was identified. The whole sequence, remember that mosquito does not cause malaria itself, but it carries it's just the host, the malaria parasites are the host, and they carry the pathogen themselves. So someone was able to identify that. And it was also shown that a particular illness, hypothyroidism, it was shown exclusively that the thyroid and the hormones in the thyroid glands, when the amounts reduced, people now developed thyroid, hypothyroidism. So, like I tried to make us see, and I think we need to understand that at this time in medicine, everybody looked for physical causes of illnesses, for tangible causes of illnesses. So the fun that people had, that black bile or all sorts of things that the founders of medicine talked about mental illness, nobody thought about that anymore. Everybody believed that there are specific organized organisms or situations that would lead to that would lead to mental illnesses. So psychiatry, the dominant view is somatic also, and everybody searched for physical causes of mental and behavioral disorders. Everybody believed there were physical causes. The spiritual and whatever in Europe, I'm specifically talking about, nobody thought about it anymore. This continued until the search continued on. I think one of the first things that psychiatrists were able to see that rescued them from not being non-doctor was the isolation of the pathogens responsible, that's Treponema pallidum, responsible for general paralysis of the insane. When that was found, at least one psychiatric illness was found to have an organic cause. I'm sure we all remember tertiary syphilis and the changes that people have during that time. So, psychiatry, at least one psychiatric illness, was caused by identifiable things. So it made psychiatry part of the mainstream of medicine. But at this point also was, should I say, epidemic of hysteria. And hysteria at that time was something rather interesting. I'm sure many of you, I hope you're still seeing my slide.
No, sir. Your slide is not moving, sir.
Sorry, is anybody seeing my slide?
We are seeing it, but it's not moving, sir.
I sent you the slide, Prof Udofia. You want to?
Okay, I should share it from my side. Okay, sir.
Not that is. Can you project it from there because I'm having problems with.
Okay, sir. I will try and do that, sir.
All right. So the point about hysteria was that the symptoms were very bizarre. I think you need to see the slides to be able to follow. Next slide, Abiola.
Um, I hope everyone can see the slide now, sir. Hello, sir. I hope you can see the slide now, sir. Sir, I hope you can see the slide.
Dr. Abdullah, I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, I hope you can see the slide now. I've started sharing it, sir.
Yes, but the slide that has hysteria should be advanced to the next one.
Okay, sir.
And yes, so like Abiola is showing, the hysteria had very bizarre presentation, and it was difficult. Nobody really knew how it should be treated, and yeah, it was a big problem for hysteria. And as long as the most prominent mental illness available, that was hysteria, the most commonly seen one, and no cause was found, it was a problem. And I'm sure many of us who are doctors remember the meaning of hysteria itself. It was many of the psychiatrists started believing that maybe it is the movement of the uterus out of its normal area, maybe into the brain, that was causing hysteria. It was a bit funny, but that was the general thought. I'm not sure whether the thoughts were pushed by psychiatrists or doctors, but it was generally believed. And the bad reason for this was that most of the people who had hysteria were female. And the almost the only thing that females, the largest thing females had and men didn't have was the uterus. So many people we can understand why they would believe that it was the movement, the wandering, or the displacement of the uterus that was responsible. But that was believed for a long time. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. This continued until Sigmund Freud came into the picture. And many of us know a little about his background. We know he was trained initially as a neurologist, and he did lots of things as a neurologist. And in the slide, I'm sure you'd see at least 3 or 4 or 5 of the different contributions he made. So he was not just a push-away doctor. He had made lots of contributions to the study of neurology, and he was a neurologist. Part of the things he did was he was one of the first people who showed that every organism had nerves and neurons, and he was able to demonstrate that with, I think it's crayfish that he used. Then, more than that, he also developed a new staining method that helped in his work. Then he was also involved in those who investigated cocaine, and it showed that it had the local anesthetic property. People say he experimented beyond in the lab. If you remember well, at that time, many people believed that cocaine was not addictive because it did not have the same characteristics as opiates, which were clearly known to be addictive. There were no known withdrawal symptoms, no biological symptoms. So people didn't really think it was addictive at that point. But he was able to advise his friends, and he used it. An ophthalmologist, he tried to drop it in people's eyes, and he saw that it was a local anesthetic. So that was from his part of the work that Sigmund Freud did. Apart from that, he made some critical work on aphasia, and the term agnosia was originally identified by him. That is, he introduced the term. Then he also did a study on infantile cerebral paralysis. That was the neurologist. So this was Freud. And let's talk a little more about him. Can we go to the next slide, sir? Good. Now, the point I want to make about him was, remember that he was a neurologist, and as a neurologist, he would have spent some months in rotation in different aspects. In those days, you'd rotate almost everywhere. He had rotations in internal medicine, in surgery, in psychiatry. Psychiatry, he spent 6 months. But after that, as a neurologist, while he was doing his researches, he needed a job as a clinical assistant. And he worked with a psychiatrist, Theodor Menet, a prominent psychiatrist at that time, who believed that, like all other parts of medicine, that there must be physical or tangible organic cause for medicine. And when there was news that a certain neurologist, Charcot, in Paris, was treating hysteria with hypnosis, Sigmund Freud went to Paris and spent between 1985 and 86 understudying hypnosis, and also working with the neurologist in France. And when he came back, he continued working and doing hypnosis and treating. The core thing about hypnosis, I think I better state, is that some of the symptoms in hysteria, some of the hysterical symptoms, were treated with hypnosis. Under hypnotic state, there were suggestions that those symptoms would not be present anymore when the patient stood up. And when the patient stood up, the symptoms were not there. So those were really the first time any doctor was able to stop or treat or reverse those hysterical situations. So that was the very first time. Then after that, he also collaborated with another who was he? I think he was a psychiatrist. And when he heard of a particular patient who was treated using what they called talking cure. Talking cure was not, there's no tangible medicine or physical intervention, but basically the doctor talked with the patient. The publication was Anna O, so let's just call her Anna, or Anna, I think Anna. The doctor that Josef Breuer, what Sigmund Freud was working with, was able to talk with the patient, and gradually the symptoms were also off. So the point I'm trying to make is that everybody believed that there must be something physical and tangible to cause any illness, including mental illness. Certain mental illness, especially the general paralysis of the insane, was found to have a tangible cause, and many doctors were looking for it. But Freud was able to use hypnosis and also talking cure to cause changes in patients to effect cure. So for the first time, certain psychological things were used. So let's go to the next slide. Thank you for bringing it up. So based on all the experiences Freud had, he now had to start getting theoretical basis, because any treatment that does not have any theoretical basis is what doctors are not going to follow. If you remember well, when people started doing hypnosis, doctors did not accept it. They called it all sorts of names, accused those who did hypnosis as being charlatans, because there was no acceptable theoretical basis for it. So there was risk that the treatment Sigmund Freud was taking participating, that's the talking cure. Because initially, before he met with the psychiatrist who was using talking cure, neurologist who was using talking cure to cure hysteria, everybody looked for one medicine or the other. And I'm sure I don't know how many of you have watched the movie Hysteria. I think you need to watch. And there are certain things, this is a movie called Hysteria, and there are some insinuations which is true, what the particular basis for, that that the vibrator that women use developed from the attempt to treat hysteria. I remember the uterus had wandered out, and wondering how people had to vibrate. One of the last, Bill, can you go back to the one of the second slide you showed? Can you go back, please? There's one that had the two women, and then there was a third thing. Yes, there's the third picture there. Good. You can see, well, for those who want to look at it, well, you see that there's the doctor on his knees. That was one of the treatments that people were being given. The concept I'm trying to say is that nobody believed that hysteria is going to be treated without medicine. And when Sigmund Freud was able, and some other people were able to use hypnosis and the people, it dropped quickly into a lot of disrepute that they were using animal magnetism, all sort of things were being used. So doctors didn't really accept that. So Freud needed to get a theoretical basis which would be acceptable for it. That's the point. So based on his treatment of the women with hypnosis, the treatment, the talking cure, and the understanding of the mind, he was one of the first doctors, actually the first doctor to find theoretical basis for psychological problems, for mental and behavioral disorders. And he, trying to make people understand the basis, proposed that the mind was made up of three structured. Remember, he was a neurologist, used to structured things. So he mentioned that the mind was made up of three structures: the id, which was the basic impulse we are all born with. It mediated sex, aggression, and all sorts of things. It sought mediation, it sought gratification in all sorts of ways, and it operates on an unconscious level. Then the next thing was, as a result of the control by parents, by society, some of the inborn unconscious impulses that people are born with were not being allowed to express themselves. For example, you would not say a few things. The conscience and the moral and the values of the society was being forced, trying to moderate the functions of the excesses of the id. So that was what he called the superego. And the third component was the ego, which actually arises as a result and attempting to moderate those innate levels of impulses and behaviors with the accepted superego principle. So this was the structure that he created for the mind. Like I said, it was a hypothesis. It's going to be a bit difficult to really call it a theory, though many people see it as a theory. Now, he also went a step further from what he found. Remember, he had treated hundreds of people with hysteria. And what he noticed was he was able to, as he talked with the people after the hysteria, he was able to find that certain things that happen in their conscious or things that had happened in the past, in their subconscious, was mediating the that the basis of some of the behaviors and things were things that had happened in the past. So he noted that certain things, part of the mind is available to us, so to our conscious, that those parts were things, maybe our thoughts that the conscious mind contain all our thoughts, memories, feelings, wishes, which were available at the moment. And he also noticed that the deep down were reserves of reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges that came up originally from the id. Many of them stayed suppressed in the subconscious. Freud also noted that there was a preconscious, and that occasionally, as a result of sleep, named after him, Freudian sleep, some of the things that are in our subconscious bubble and escape into the consciousness. He also mentioned that not just Freudian sleep, certain aspects of dreams, certain themes in our dreams came from those deep unconscious. And it's also known that during that symptoms, sometimes when some of the patients who had symptoms of psychological, mental and behavioral disorders were actually extrusion from the deep unconscious. So that was the picture Freud created, that symptoms occur when some of the repressed and suppressed thoughts came up into the conscious. So that's the core thing. I think Jude mentioned some of the things I've talked about in some earlier lectures. I just thought we should mention it so we can see a link with how things progress. Then next slide, sir. Yes, then he also mentioned that sometimes he found from his interaction with the women and some, he also worked in the asylum, Vienna asylum. So it's not just the women he was treating, he also saw. So from his interaction with the patients, he noticed that when things happen, that the body activates a defense mechanism, which are unconscious
psychological processes that are used to mitigate anxiety and reduce internal conflict, especially conflicts between the ego and superego. You remember I mentioned that sometimes Abiola, you're going faster than I am, but it's okay. Then can you go back to, yes. There are lots of what do you call defense mechanism. I'm sure many of us know of them. There's repression, denial, displacement, projection, and lots of them. For psychiatry, we try to group them into adaptive, maladaptive, and all sort of things. But these were the basic things that he proposed. When there's a stressful situation, and if left unchecked, the anxiety caused by those stressful situations, the risk, if the anxiety stay, they can compromise the ego. So these psychological processes are activated to protect the person. They are usually automatic. Nobody really sits down to plan. So sometimes they are activated, and his proposal was that these are all activated subconsciously to reduce anxiety and protect the integrity of the ego. All right, go to the next one. They're just listing the next two slides, just showing the. All right, good. Now, apart from that, he also went through the different stages of. I'm sure we all studied this. I'm sure even if you are not studying and you are a social worker or a psychologist and you are present, you would have heard about the different psychosexual stages. Oral. I'm taking through them because I want us to remember that Freud, in his attempt to explain non-psychotic conditions, in his attempt to explain the neurotic conditions as they were called at that time, found enough evidence to propose. Remember, these are all hypotheses. I keep saying, not theories. He had enough reasons to propose that some of the problems are as a result of fixation in the different psychosexual stages: oral, anal, philic, latent, and genital stages. He proposed that if someone is fixated at the oral stage, the part of the libido or the energy would be kept back at that stage. The libido is the life force, and if one had some problems and could not negotiate any of the psychosexual stages properly, some of the life force, the libido, would be fixated at that point, mainly to contain the symptoms that could occur there. So if someone from that in real life, people like that would at certain times do lots of mouth kind of thing, or if an illness or a symptom or stressful situation occurs, the fixated point could be reactivated, and the person can start behaving or showing features that were common in those times. So those are the meaning of fixation. Some of the life force or libido is left in that stage. Even if the person is moving on, part of his energy, life energy, is left behind, is fixed at that point to contain the symptoms, to allow the person to progress. If someone is able to negotiate those areas between 0 and 1, 1 and 3, if someone is able to negotiate them properly, nothing is left. Nothing is there to suppress or contain. So one has all his energy and life force to move on with the other stages. So those were the basic things that he talked about at that point. The next, okay, this is the theory. Yeah, I think I've gone a bit faster because I thought I would be without going through all the details of the discussion. But I think it's okay. We may probably have longer time to talk about what we're doing. So the core thing I want us to remember, that the point I'm trying to make. That Sigmund Freud did not just wake up from his dreams to create psychoanalytic theory. There was a need. Psychiatrists believe, like many of them believe at this time, that all the mental and behavioral disorders have organic basis. Now we say organic or psychological. We owe it to Freud that the possibility of psychological causes were brought into the fore, because the bulk of the doctors believed it had to be physical things. Of course, we've since found many physical illnesses that are caused by that we've found a lot of psychological causes, that psychological disorders that are caused by physical causes. When the CAT scan was initially recognized, I can't remember the name, in the 50s, someone took time out to do a scan of many of the patients who had been abandoned in European hospitals. Many of them were said to have hysteria or one behavior or the other, and they were locked up in hospitals. And as many as, I think, 25% of them had identifiable problems in the brain, and some of them had surgery and they recovered. So that doesn't mean, and I'm trying to say that even although Freud especially believed that there were organic causes for mental illness, the organic causes were not known at that point. So the psychoanalytical theory and psychoanalysis were in a way created as a stopgap. We don't know everything. Science has not helped us to do everything, but as it stands, if we understand some of these things, it might help us to treat the patient. I think that those were the core things. And to create that, many people now know from hypnosis and other things that people can induce mental illness on others. Under hypnosis, one can be made to behave in a particular way or do certain things. So it's now known that many psychological processes cause mental and behavioral illnesses. But even although people now know this, many doctors are still skeptical about psychological causes. Not psychiatrists, not us in the group, but many people, I think in Africa and in Nigeria, people still believe in possession and devils and things, because the doctors have not been able to show physical causes. If we note, in many patients who have physical illnesses, traditionally people are more likely to take them to hospital. That's because investigations are there, things can be done, are given, made well. But in mental and behavioral disorders, most times one needs to go to the hospital so many times and stuff, and there's no proper way of saying this particular thing causes it. So doctors were a bit excited and happy some years ago when people believed that finally we'll be able to do a proper diagnosis of depression using dexamethasone suppression test. It didn't last. Now people believe that schizophrenia is caused by changes or interactions or something related to dopamine. But the more you read about the dopamine theory, the more you see that it's not an exact science. Many people call it theory, but it's not theory. Dopamine hypothesis, I think that's the word. Until now, many of the neuroscience basis, the biological basis we cite for mental and behavioral disorders are still hypotheses. They are not theories. They are not there. They cannot be expected or predicted based on those theories. So, luckily, many of us, all psychiatrists, and maybe because of the activities of the psychologists that come to, and everybody now agree that psychological causes of illness exist, and that if someone is treated properly, that person will get well. Now, few people do psychoanalysis. The training itself is tedious. and the duration and the duration of the illness of the treatment. So psychoanalysis is still taught, is still explained, not because sorry, it's still explained because some of the things we're ever going to borrow from many of the terms you're going to use in any psychoanalytic many of the terms, most of the terms we are going to use in other psychotherapies were borrowed from psychoanalysis. I'm not saying that should be a good reason for it to persist, but many people have the skills, resort to some psychoanalytical skills if they have it in certain conditions. So it's good to have a good grasp of it and understand. Don't just understand the psychosexual stages for the fun of it, but understand that it could be, like Freud said, certain things that happen in our infancy, in our young age, older age, have been found to still be present and influence behavior. I'm sure if you ask, when you do your history and mental state examination, you still see that people who had some abuses in their formative years of life, rape, whatever they had, parents were a bit difficult and stuff like that. Even as adults, that happened in those days is still there and is still influencing behavior. So even if we throw away psychoanalysis as such, but the things that Freud presented and they presented to us is still useful and still available to keep us going. So these are the summaries I have, and it's a bit quick because I'm not controlling any of the things, luckily. And my my phone is too hot, and I'm sure it's going to switch off things anytime from now. That's why I've gone through it that fast. So we've gotten the basis for the theories behind the different things. So when we're going to talk about psychoanalysis the next time I have a lecture, maybe next week, but if another person is giving the lecture, this will be done after. But when we're talking about that, we'll be able to borrow from many of the things that we've said today to really understand the concept. So, gentlemen, that's what we've talked about. Unconscious things drive the ego, symptoms of illnesses. Yeah, so these are the things. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, sir. Please let's clap more and more for our father.
So I don't know. We have lots of almost an hour for discussion, but till 12.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if there are any comments, or I'm sure it will be more comments. But if there are also questions, we'll be able to see if we can answer them, like we usually do.
Thank you very much, sir. A lot of us are very grateful for giving us the professorial lecture as usual. We really appreciate, because you still help us clarify some of those concepts that we have read, they have explained to us, but we still need to understand the nuance there. Thank you so much, sir. We are very grateful. I want to believe that a lot of people want to make. Thank you. Keep the clapping, keep the accolade coming, please. I want to believe that a lot of us will still want to ask questions, make comments, and all are welcome, please. Can let's signify and go ahead to make the comment or ask the question. please, as we are keeping the question coming, let's also try to go to the chat and the post section and note, identify when we join. Please, kindly let's do that too. Let's put our name to register on the gist on the GT so that it will be easier to know who participated today. Thank you very much. I'm sure we are all huge. Maybe that's why we have been so silent, sir. Uh, we are huge. We are grateful for the lecture you gave us, sir. And the trying to summarize this beautiful concept in this very short period is a very demonstration of the mystery of the mastery of the mystery that psychoanalysis is. Uh, just if you permit me just to run this, that you are be able to also take us to those areas that help us to appreciate that we might not know some of these neurobiological basis of what mental illness might be, yet there are some that are coming up. But you have also given us from historical perspective the malaria saga that for several centuries many people believe it is caused by evil spirits, that they will call that also from the name bad air, that from the bad air, the evil spirits who smell bad in the swampy area that make people who go there to develop malaria. They have high fever and some do die from it, not knowing that's where malaria grow very well. And the growth of malaria there, when people go there, they get bitten by mosquitoes who carry the parasites that cause the malaria. And all this idea that it took long before the discovery that, okay, there are some vectors that play a role in that, in the case of malaria, and the discovery of that changed the dynamics of it and helped to reduce the supernatural causation of illness that people attributed to malaria. And you make a link to that. The most in most of our still recent experience, we still believe that there are evil spirits that may be responsible for the causation of some of the mental illness. And I think this theory that you have given us have helped us to understand, and many other theories that we might be familiar with, to help us to understand that no, mental illness is unique, that there's no evil spirit that is the cause. It's just like every other physical illness, just like the story of malaria. As we understood the pathophysiology of it, we will know the pathogens that cause it, and we will know treatment that work. So the similar way in psychiatry, that you have given us the story of one of the men in the 19th century that gave us that foundation to be able to challenge and change that orientation. However, I do have one challenge that I've been trying to battle with, and then I'm trying to look at psychology is usually looked at from historically, that is the study of the soul, but now it's changed to the mind. So I'm trying to look, is it also the influence of Sigmund Freud work and activities and experiments that was able to change that initial belief that the psychology should be about studying and understanding challenges and managing the soul uh, issues that individual have, rather than the mind, because the mind was not really in the picture then. But now we have a different understanding of what the mind is, as distinct and unique and different from soul. And now the focus of psychology, psychiatry, and is now on the mind and the negligence of the soul. So I don't know whether he is also responsible for this, because I want to believe that there are some of these founding fathers might be some of the people that do contributed in this discourse and in the understanding of what we know now, and we have the scientific evidence to move towards that. But that's just my ranting out question, sir. Thank you, sir. So it seems you are muted, sir.
Sorry. Freud. We are asking whether. Okay, let me move. It's a question whether Sigmund Freud was responsible for movements from soul to the mind. I don't know. That's a funny question. Not a funny question. I have a close relation of mine who is a psychiatrist, and we spend half our days on earth arguing on what the mind is. And I tell him that in psychiatry, we have left dualism behind. Cartesian dualism, we've left it behind. That the difference between the mind and the I is the difference between the eye and the nose. The eye, the nose, are all parts of. So is the mind. It's not two distinct things. It's still part of us. So that's the concept of that. Psychiatrists have to move away from dualism if they're ever going to progress on earth. So thinking about the soul is not, I don't know, how do I put it? I know that the Christian belief and many of the monotheistic religions tend to see the body and the soul and the spirit as distinct entities. But in psychiatry, we see all of it. For those of us who do not believe in dualism, we see all of it as part of the body. The body has different cells, different functions, different locations. So one can ask me, like he always asks me, where is the soul? Where is the the mind doesn't exist as such. It is a function of something else. I mean, these are all arguments, but psychiatrists believe that if let's take from what we know. During neurosurgical operations, certain parts of the brain are touched and people have feelings. Certain things are done. So there's really no difference between there's it's funny I'm saying this in public. There's really no difference between the soul. The soul is part of us. Luckily, you were talking about the soul, not the spirit. We believe that the spirit belongs to God and goes back to. And I think, like it said in the Bible, that God breathed into man and he became a living soul. I don't know. I'm not a perfect person to separate this because I'm not sure whether the soul is different from the mind. I'm not sure whether they're distinct things. Okay. But the Bible talks about the inner man. Sometimes it calls it the spirit, sometimes it calls it the soul. Is that does it mean that the soul and the spirit are distinct? I don't really know. Maybe that's why we still need theology and theologians to theorize the difference between. I look at it in a more physical way, sadly. We studied physics in school, all of us. We know about the electric wire. It transmits electrons or electricity. Of course, the electricity can be, the electrons are now visible. Even smaller things are visible. But let's take that when the wire is transmitting electricity, a force field is created around it, electromagnetism. Is electromagnetism distinct and different from electricity? Is magnetism different from the electricity? If you switch off the magnetism that existed on the wire stops to exist. Then when the wire is functioning properly and actively, there's a force field around it. Is the magnetism intrinsic part of the wire or the electricity? I'm thinking that maybe that's how we should look at soul and body. One doesn't electromagnetism doesn't exist in the absence of wire. Magnetism does. But does the body, does the soul, does the mind, I don't know. Dr. Bella, I'm sorry I can't help answer the question. I'm just adding my own confusion to it. So if you have better answers, I'll be heartily excited to listen to it.
My apologies, I don't have any answer. So, and I felt the presentation you have given is making me mind to go there and trying to spark up something about the understanding in that area. So that's what make me to ask that there might be some link there. We are very grateful, sir. I'm very grateful for the response. But because you still provide some of the scientific basis to be able to appreciate the role of the mind as distinct and unique from the brain, just like you have mentioned about the wires, the electromagnetic forces inside them, and how the currents were conducted. Thank you very much, sir. We are still waiting for more comments and more.
No, but if there are no comments, shouldn't we close early and be happy about it?
Yes, sir. Well, I want to believe that people do have comments or questions to ask. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you very much, sir. Uh, sorry, sir, if I may still ask. Something just came to my mind again. I understanding the hypothesis given by Sigmund Freud. It has lead most of the hypotheses in from other areas of psychology to try to map the mind, because everybody try to have a map of the mind of what it is, and it seems Sigmund Freud has given us the first that provide such mapping for the mind as distinct from the behavioral belief that is mind, but they don't have they just believe the behavior will identify the body. It seems this gave us one of the first understanding of how to be able to understand the pathophysiology of what an illness, how it comes to be, and what to do about it. And thank you, sir. Because you said that will be part of what you take us through the next half of this presentation. Thank you, sir.
I don't know. Dr. Bella, I didn't quite get that.
What I was just
You are saying that the map, the map proposed by Sigmund Freud, Superego, that the map you're talking about?
the the
Is that the map you're talking about?
structural model of the mind and the
Yes,
topographic
but
model.
good. Does it exist? This is his hypothesis.
Mm,
You remember that science is not just you giving an idea.
yes, sir.
It should be refutable. People should do experiments to show it is correct or show it is not correct. There's no experiment that has been done. You see, Sigmund Freud himself, like I tried to mention, was a scientist.
Yes, sir.
He made several discoveries and things. But yes, and like I showed in my very first slide, those introductory things, what Sigmund Freud did was to do a placeholder. One day we would know what causes neurotic conditions, hysteria, anxiety. We will know what causes it. But until science comes up to the point, let's use this to understand it and explain it and help people who have illnesses. You yourself mentioned that at the time people thought of malaria as bad air and demons and stuff. But it didn't stop people from, even although the etiology was wrong, it didn't stop attempts at treatment. You remember, people still tried to treat
Yes,
it.
sir.
People made hot, what's it called? Got temperature to see if it would help. Lots of things. People try to do lots of things to see if it would help. So until we reach a point where we can identify the way. Even now, we can't say with all certainty that everybody who has schizophrenia, for example, would benefit from the antipsychotic drugs. Many people are taken and they deteriorate and die and they don't get well.
Yes.
You get the point.
Yes.
So science, when we reach a point of science, it will be like blood sugar. We identify the pancreas, we identify the what's it called, the insulin, identify all the things are worked out and everybody sees it. Then it becomes a theory. So what Sigmund Freud did was to create some ways to manage, to understand, to discuss, to attempt to treat. Many patients have been treated using psychological things and they have gotten well.
Yes, sir.
I was just thinking through. Remember some of the patients I do hypnosis. I think I've told you before.
Yes.
Some patients I used hypnotic interventions. One of them had the husband opened a big house in Lagos and invited all his friends to show he has arrived. It was one of the big SAN, those big judges and stuff. And the wife served the drinks with the wrong glasses. I don't know how many of us know the difference between wine glass and champagne glass. And he knew the difference. I don't still know the difference. The wife didn't know. And after people had gone, the man felt so bad and told the wife that he disgraced him in public. You get what I'm trying to say? And after 2 hours of argument, she stopped talking. And for a week after that, she had aphonia and then she couldn't talk again. And she was brought to me and we were able to get her talking within a short time because we had to use hypnosis and stuff like that. So I'm trying to say that these things still exist
Yes.
and we can resort to them to help individuals sometimes with the hope that in time, medicine would have reached a certain level of sophistication, of certain level of sophistication, and we'll be able to manipulate and identify the specific strands that cause the illness and know the specific things to put at specific points, and the people will get well. Then we will become exact science like orthopedic surgery is.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Please, Dr. Bilu Mujid, Professor Bilu Mujid, please kindly go ahead, ma'am. Kindly unmute yourself and go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning,
Good morning,
teacher,
ma'am.
our good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
My name
ma'am.
is majorly to appreciate our teacher, Professor Udofia, sir, for
Please
the
scan this QR
very
code to
erudite
confirm you are
teaching we
not a
had this
robot.
morning.
Repeat. Scan
And
this
to
QR
just
code to
add
confirm
that,
you are not a robot.
well, while the lecture was ongoing, I was just thinking about the application
Please
to
scan this
child
QR code
mental
to
health
confirm you are not a
issues.
robot. Repeat.
And while
Scan this
Prof
QR
was
code to confirm you are not a robot.
putting
Please scan
emphasis
this
on
QR
the
code to confirm you are not a robot.
therapy, I
Repeat.
say yes,
Scan
it's a
this
talking
QR code
therapy.
to confirm you are not a
And I
robot.
just want to say that although we don't really have research and applications on
Please
the
scan
child
this QR code to
psychoanalysis in our
confirm you are not a
environment,
robot.
and I'm
Repeat.
just sharing
Scan this QR
experiences
code to
that
confirm you are not a
majorly
robot.
with the teachings and trainings we have this morning, I said, okay, how do we apply it? Do we have an aspect of it in our own clinical setting? And what I observe is that the the application to children majorly appears to start from the play aspect, because initially at the earlier stages it may be a bit challenging or difficult for a child to talk about the inner experiences or about the unconscious feelings. So the aspect of the play often helps the therapist or the child psychiatrist to understand some of the inner feelings, together with interaction or interviews with the parents of the children. And the goal, essentially, why we're doing that is to have some understanding into the inner feelings or some of the exhibited behavior, and then we may go back and try to see how do we apply it. But over time, when the child gets older, maybe school age group or adolescents, then it's a lot easier to have the adolescent talk about some of this distressing or inner experiences. And the knowledge of the training we have this morning usually help us to also work with the parents, and the child will be part of it, and it's very interesting. Like I said, we don't really have the practical applications per se in our setting, but as I listen to Prof, I just said, okay, we have some of the applications, and I just said, okay, let me share this according to the developmental changes, the feelings, and some of the experiences that we have. So once again, I really want to appreciate Prof, sir, for this teaching this morning. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Prof. We really appreciate your contribution. There's still more of our teachers here, colleagues, and everyone is there. I think it's what we are familiar and contributing will go a long way to that. For everybody that have said thank you, we are most grateful. But our contribution, we had more to this so that it will prepare us for the second half of the lecture. Thank you very much. Uh, with the permission of our teacher, Professor Udofia, and it's just to still remind us that uh, the series we're having, the introductory series, we might soon round up. We are very grateful because we have done this. This will be the 12th, about the 11th session. This is supposed to run for like 12 to around 16 sessions. So that from this, we'll move to the core uh, specific modality of psychotherapy. So we are looking forward to that. But these are the foundations that we need, because without this foundation, it's going to be difficult to for anyone who wants to learn specific aspects just to jump into it. Then there will always be confusion when there are inputs from other areas. Like Professor Udofia has told us this morning that most of the other aspects of psychotherapy, they hold a lot of the terminology and some others specific skills to psychoanalysis. And so, if you don't have all this basic understanding of the various things that have been discussed earlier, and we jump into one specific modality, then it may bring challenges when we see other aspects that will be valuable in learning and improving and sharpening our skills in that modality that we're learning. So that is the part of the essence that our father, Professor Dofia, Professor Harry, and all others that have put this together. say no, we need to have this basic foundation, and it's serving the purpose, and hopefully it will help us bring a more stronger uh, psychotherapy foundation in Nigeria. The last week on was also introducing us to some of those things that we'll learn more in depth about indigenous own, that will be easier to learn, easier to spread, and there will be less challenge with copyright and all those other challenges that become up. So all those are going on, and our teachers are still helping us to push that. Yeah, we are hopeful that this series might continue next week or upper week, depending on the people that will be ready to give more on the introductory lectures. And thank you very much. The echo about the practical application is there, and it will keep coming up. So we thank all our teachers that are here, our medical directors that are here, our elders that are here, my fellow colleagues that are here, all the rest are my colleagues. So I would say all the rest are my fellow colleagues that are here. I'm just one of the, I'm the boy in this group. So I'm very grateful to everyone to make it today. And we'll look forward to further sessions and looking more to our contribution. And like has always been emphasized, the discussion continues in the group. Please, we should not hesitate to bring up issues related to what we have discussed today throughout the week, so that to intensify and bring more of those foundation there. Please, on the WhatsApp page, all of us are there. Let's make the contribution in order to further improve and intensify our learning. Thank you very much. And we look forward to subsequently. Prof, sir, over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And ladies for being present. So we'll continue on the chat group, like Tajuddin has said. And if there are questions or issues, we'll be able to discuss them and we'll meet. Definitely next week, there'll be another, either if the other lectures are holding, otherwise, we'll do the rest of the thing on psychoanalysis and then get on with it. So thank you very much for the presence, and thanks, Abiola, for coming to the rescue again when my screen got frozen. Thank you very much. All right, bye-bye then.
Bye-bye, sir. Our gratitude, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Recording is on.